Hey everyone, welcome to part 1 of this Blender car animation series. In this tutorial, I'll show you how to build the environment, rig the car, and set up our very first animation shot. By the end of this video, you have a complete scene like the one you're seeing right now with a car driving through it. This is just the beginning. We'll be taking it step by step, so even if you're new to Blender, you'll be able to follow along. So let's get started. We'll start by adding a plane to act as our road. Then I'll scale it along the y-axis by pressing S, then Y. Next, let's jump into the shading tab, create a new material, and apply a road texture. So then we just search for a road texture, and then I'm using Ctrl-Shift-T to load in all the maps at once: the base color, the roughness, normal maps, and displacement. Then once that's done, we can switch back into the layout tab, go into material preview, and then scale it along the y-axis to match the scene better. Now, to give some shape to our road, I'll add a path, and then I will rotate it by 90 degrees on the z-axis. Then I will scale it a bit, then press tab to enter edit mode. And from the top view, I'll extrude with E to draw out the road however I want. Once that's done, select the road mesh and add an array modifier. Okay, array modifier. Then I'll set the factor to 1 on the y-axis so the road tiles forward, then increase the count to extend it. Then to make the curves look smoother, I'll add a few loop cuts, and finally I will then add the curve modifier and set it to the path we created, and now the road deforms nicely along that curve. Next, we're going to add a plane and move it to the side with G and X, making sure it lines up perfectly with the road so there's no intersection. Then I'll hit press tab, go into edit mode and select the two end vertices and move them to the side, make it wider since this will act as our ground. And then I'll also scale it along the y-axis to stretch it out. And then after scaling, I'll subdivide it a few times. This makes the surface smoother on the curves and also prepares it for the particles later on. And then next, I will duplicate it with Shift D, then change the pivot point to the 3D cursor and mirror it by pressing S, then -1 on the x-axis. Then once that's done, I'll exit edit mode, add an array modifier, set the Y factor to 1 and increase the count so it extends forwards. I'll also add a curve modifier so that it follows the same path as the road. With the ground in place, let's bring in textures. I'm using the polygon add-on here, which makes it easy to search for a ground texture. Once I find one I like, I apply it. Then Polygon provides a built-in scaling option so I can match the texture to the environment without touching the UV editor in the shading tab, as you can see here. So now once that's done, we go back into the layout, go to File, click Append to append some assets, or bring in some trees from my library. You can just navigate to the folder, select the models you want, and then append them. If you don't have tree models, I will link some in the description. I search for the tree models I want to use first. Then what I do when I'm here is I select them each individually by pressing Ctrl and left click on the button to select multiple assets at once. Then I am also going to add in these two rocks, and then after that I hit append. And now with the ground selected, I'll add a particle system and set it to hair. At first, you notice it only affects part of the mesh. That's because of the array modifier. So to fix that, I set my array count to the final number I need, which in this case is 40. And then apply the modifier. Once applied, the particle system distributes across the entire surface. Next, let's go into edit mode by pressing tab. I'll select everything with A, then merge by distance with M, merge by distance. After that, I'll deselect everything, go to the right side of the plane and press L to select the plane. Then flip the normals with Ctrl Shift N to recalculate them. Now the particles display correctly instead of being upside down. From there, let's tweak the particle system, increase the number of particles, then set the source to random and change the render type to collection. Then I'll move the important trees into a new collection called trees by pressing M, then name it and create. With the ground selected again, I'll set the particle system's instance collection to trees and enable object rotation. Now I'll select the tree models and then rotate them on the y-axis by 90 degrees. Then move them down slightly so they don't pop into the view of the camera angle. After that, it's just a matter of adjusting the particle settings, scaling the trees randomly so they don't look all the same, and increasing or reducing the number until the distribution feels natural. Since the viewport doesn't show everything clearly, I'll switch to the rendered view to check how it looks. As you can see, the trees are starting to look good. Okay, and then now I will adjust the number, try to increase the scale randomness, so they don't look the same. Then now I will go into the weight paint to control where the trees appear across the ground plane. This lets us use paint areas where trees should or shouldn't spawn, giving us more control over the environment. Alright, so next we're going to add in the grass. To do that, I'll go to File, Append, then search for the grass models I want. Once I find them, I just select the ones that I need. So I hit Ctrl and left click on the mouse button. And once that's done, I append. Now once they show up in the viewport, they might cause a lot of lag if we leave them as they are. So what I like to do is go into the object settings and change the viewport display from texture to bounds. That way Blender runs much smoother, especially with the fact that we're going to be adding a particle system. So now let's select all the grass models, press M to move them into a new collection, and I'll call that collection grass. Just nice and simple. Now let's go back to the plane, open the particle system and add a new one. Set it to hair and set to random collection. And as you can see, we did not create the collection, so I will go back to the grass models. Then I will press M again, new collection, name it grass, and create. So now I go back to the plane, particle system, and select the grass as the particle system, and then enable object rotation. Then once that's all done, I'll grab the grass models, rotate them by 90 degrees on the x-axis, on the y-axis actually, so it's upright. Then I'll go back to the plane, the particle system, I'll increase the number. Here I'm using 10,000. Also adjust the scale and the scale randomness so it doesn't look too uniform. Now let's jump into render view, and yeah, that's already looking good, but we don't want grass covering the entire plane, so I'll use weight paint to control where it shows up. So what I will do is I'll go into weight paint, then I will add a new vertex group and call it grass. Then I'll also rename the one for trees. I'll name it to trees. Go back to the grass vertex group, and I will just paint the sides of the road, since that's what the camera will mostly see. Once that is done, I'll go back to the particle settings, assign that grass vertex group to the density, and then I will re-enable the trees in the viewport, switch to render view again, and boom, it's starting to come to life now. Alright, so now we're going to add some leaves into the scene. Press Shift plus A, then add your transparent leaf texture. Then once that's done, go into edit mode by pressing tab, add a few loop cuts to it so that you can shape it up and it looks more like an actual leaf instead of a flat card. Next, I'll select the road, go into the particle system, add a new particle system, set the render as object and the instance object as our leaf. And now you've noticed that we have the same problem that we had earlier. The array modifier is messing with the particle system, so to fix that we need to apply it to the modifier to the road. Once that's done, the leaves will show up properly. Now let's rotate the leaf by 90 degrees on the y-axis, and then moving it out of the camera's view so that it is not distracting. But let's also not forget to enable object rotation in the particle system settings. Next, select the road again. Then before weight painting, let's clean up the geometry. So go into edit mode, then select everything and press M to merge by distance. Then I'll add a loop cut right through the middle, and then while it's selected, I'll press Ctrl B to bevel it slightly so it's only affecting sides of the road. I also add a couple more loop cuts along the edges. Select them with Alt, click Ctrl B as well. Okay, just like that. And now we go back to weight paint, and then here I'll paint mainly the sides of the road, since that's where I want most of the leaves to appear. Then once that's done, in the particle settings, I'll assign the new vertex group we just painted as the density group for the source. Make sure the distribution is set to random so the leaves are scattered more naturally. Okay, so now that we have the leaves, let's move on to the car. I'll disable the scene collection for a moment to keep things clear. Then I'll import our car model and bring it as a JBL file. I got this model from Sketchfab. I'll put the link in the description so you can grab it as well. Alright, so now let's get into rigging the car. First, I'll switch it to wireframe mode so it's easier to see everything. Then I'll select all the car parts, right click and choose clear parent and keep transform. What this does is it removes all the parenting that was set up with these empty objects while still keeping the parts in place. Because yeah, personally, I don't like working with a bunch of unnecessary empties. So after clearing that, I'll now start to select and delete those extra empties from the scene manually. That way we're left with just the actual car parts and clean and ready for rigging. So once that is done, I'll select all the tires and hide them by pressing H so they're out of the way. Then I will switch back to wireframe view, select the entire body of the car and press Ctrl J to join all the geometry together. Okay, then once that is done, I'll rename it in the outliner to body. Renaming is important here because the rigger card needs a clear naming to recognize the parts correctly. Then next I will unhide the tires. Then I'll hide the body instead so we can work on the wheels. I'll go into wireframe mode again and start selecting the tire parts individually before joining them. I'll first start by selecting the brake calipers. I want the brake calipers joined together as their own object, so I'll combine those first. Then once that is done, I will go back to the tires and select the tire parts. So in the wireframe, select the entire tire, then I'll press C and deselect the brake calipers, and then I'll reselect the tire to have an active selection and press Ctrl J and set the geometry to origin. The origin to geometry, sorry. This makes sure the wheels spin properly around its axis when we animate it later. Alright, so now that the wheels are joined properly, let's go ahead and rename them so the rigger car don't recognize them well. So for the front left wheel, I'll name it wheel-ft.l. Then the front right will be wheel-ft.r. Okay, then the back left will be wheel-bk.l, and the back right wheel will be wheel-bk.r. So now that the wheels are named, I'll unhide the car body again. Then I'll select everything, making sure the body is active. Then Shift A to add the car deformation rig. Now check the bonds to make sure they are all in the right places. In my case, I notice my front left wheel, my front right wheel does not get bonds, and that's because I made a mistake when naming. I forgot the dot in the naming, so if it happens to, just fix the name and re-add the car deformation rig. Once that's corrected, you'll see all the bonds properly. So at this point, I'll just adjust the body bone a little bit to make sure it's aligned. And then hit generate on the rigger car panel once done. And as you can see, the car has been flipped over and the rig looks a little messed up, but don't worry, this is just a bug in the newer Blender versions. The rig itself still works fine, and that's what matters. And one more thing I forgot to do earlier, the brake calipers, we don't want them rotating with the wheels, so I'll select them and parent them to the body of the car instead. And with that fixed, I'll go ahead and regenerate the rig again. And again, the car flips upside down, but that's not a problem. The rig is still functional, it still works perfectly, and that's all that matters here. So I'll now go back into object mode and rotate the whole thing by 180 degrees on the y-axis to get it upright again. Now that the rig is working, I'll unhide the collection for the environment, then select the car rig and rotate it by 180 degrees on around the z-axis so it lines up with the direction of the road. After that, I'll just align its position on the z-axis to make sure it sits perfectly on top of the road surface. Next, I need to fix something we skipped earlier. If you remember, we didn't paint the entire road for the particle system, so I'll go back to weight paint mode and finish painting across the whole road this time. Once that's done, I'll return to object mode and then switch to rendered view to check how everything is looking. And yeah, as you can see, the scene is really starting to come to life now. So the next step here is setting up our first camera movement. I've already positioned the camera above the road. So what I want to do is for the car to drive into the view instead of already being visible. So to do that, I just move the car out of frame. So for first shot, it's going to be 4 seconds long. So I'll change the range from 1 to 250 to 1 to 120, like I've done here. So now select the camera, and then set a keyframe on the very first frame by pressing I. Then move to the last frame, which is 120. Since we're working with 4 seconds here. And then at frame 120, I'll move the camera along the y-axis and then press I somewhere around there. And then to make the motion linear, I'll select both keyframes, press V, set it to vector. This makes the camera movement smooth and straight without easing out or easing in. Next, let's set up a car movement. So I will duplicate the path for the road and move it to the side. This duplicated path will act as a motion for our car. Now I'll select the rig, go into top view and align it roughly with the duplicated path. The car rig selected, I'm going to pause mode by pressing Ctrl and Tab. Then from there, I'll select the main control bone at the bottom of the rig and then add a follow path constraint. And then for the target, I'll choose the path we just duplicated. And also make sure to enable both fixed position and follow curve. Then you might notice the car jumps backwards when you apply this, but that's fine. We just need to move it back to its position so it lines up with the path. Once it's aligned, if I adjust the offset factor, you see the car now follows the path correctly. So here's how we're now going to animate it. So what we're going to do now is at frame 1, you go to frame 1 and add a keyframe. We're going to add a keyframe at frame 1 on the offset factor, and then we'll go to frame 120. Then while there, go into your camera view, then increase the offset factor until the car drives into the center of the shot, like somewhere there, right there. And then we'll set another keyframe and then play the animation and see how it looks like. Okay, first let's set the keyframes to vector so the movement is linear. And yeah, that looks better. So another small adjustment I want to make is I don't want the car driving into the shot right away, so I'll select both keyframes and move them forward. That way the car enters the scene a little later, but I think I pushed them too far at first, so I'll move them back slightly. And yeah, timing feels much better now. The car now drives in more naturally instead of appearing right away. So I wasn't really feeling the trees that I used earlier, so I went ahead and downloaded some new ones from PolyHaven. The setup process is exactly the same as we did before with the previous particle systems. Just append the new models, create a collection, and then use that collection in the particle system. If you want to swap out yours too, just repeat the same steps we covered earlier. I'll just run a quick time lapse of me setting these up so we can move on. Another thing I like to do for optimization is, since I don't render all shots at once, I only keep particles in the camera view. So for example, now that we've finished the first shot, we're just going into weight paint and clear out all the areas that are outside of the camera's view. You just hold Control and paint with the mouse to erase the parts. This way the particles are only where the camera actually sees them, so we're not wasting memory, and it also helps speed up your render time. With the first shot done, let's move on to the render settings. So go into your render tab and switch from EV to cycles in case you haven't done that already. Under device, make sure you select GPU and also check denoise, and use GPU has to be checked as well. Then for the render samples, I set mine to 256, but you can also use 100 if you want faster results, but in my case I went with 256. And then you scroll down and enable motion blur, since the car is moving and it makes the movement look much smoother. Then you're going to the output settings, change the file format from PNG to FFmpeg video, choose where you want your animation to be saved. Then once you locate the folder, you just name the animation, and then once the animation has been named, just click accept, and that's where you find your render once it's done. Then also, I forgot to talk about the sky. So for the sky, I went into the world properties, changed the color to sky texture, and lowered the strength from 1 to around 0.3. You can adjust to however you like depending on your scene. Then just tweak the sun's elevation and rotation until it matches the look you want. And that's it. Once everything is set, just hit render animation, or just press Ctrl plus F12, then let it render, and you're done with the first shot. And that's it for part 1 of this tutorial series. In the next part, we'll keep building on and take things even further, so make sure you hit that like and subscribe button so you don't miss it. If you'd like to get the project files for this tutorial or any other animation that you've seen on my channel, they are available on my Patreon, and if you've got any questions, drop them down in the comments and I'll reply to all of them. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in part 2.